Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Rhinebeck Central School District Board of Education. It is Tuesday, January 23rd, 2018. I call this meeting to order. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of our last meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion or amendment? Okay. All those in favor? It's unanimous. That motion passes. We have a moment for public comment. Would anyone in the public wish to comment?
Ladies and gentlemen.
We have a wonderful audience.
You always have something to say.
This is your moment. All right. There'll be another time for public comment. So, moving along, we are very pleased to welcome Mr. Boucher to do the annual interscholastic athletics report.
I apologize. Better than Nick.
I don't know about that.
I sent to you to get your packets the outline for the information, as we have done in the past, starting with the New York State Public High School Athletic Association update. One of the only real significant change coming from the state office is the way in which classification numbers are going to be calculated. This one came out of left field, I would say, because nobody had heard about it, and then the next thing you know, it was there on us, and then it was passed. In an effort to make scheduling easier, they are now going to approve bed numbers 2 years in advance. So
They is whom?
They is the New York State Public High School Athletic Association.
Which is not the state education
It is
department.
not state education. It is the New York State Public High School Athletic Association. So previously what would happen is State Ed would report the bed numbers to the State Public High School Athletic Association from Beds Day. And they would take 9, 10, and 11 of this year to calculate next year's classification. That is the way it will be for next year. But starting this year in June, and then every June after that, they will take this year's final number in June, as reported by State Ed, of the 9th grade, the 10th grade, and an average of the 9th and 10th grade to take care of our classifications from here on out. So a positive is it will allow us to know where we're going to be in terms of size of schools that we're playing earlier. It will allow the schedulers to schedule some of the more significantly dangerous sports, shall we say. Football seems to be the driving force for schedules. They like to be able to do football schedules because football, playing like-sized schools, is better fit for everybody. So that's the only significant change for that. Based upon, and we won't know what our final beds number is until June. If we took our beds number that it was in October, so next year we'll be at 274, which should make us a B school again. I say should make us a B school again because on the February 2nd New York State Public High School Athletic Association Executive Committee meeting, they have a change to the cut numbers, the classification numbers. So as long as that passes, and it seems like it's going to, then we would stay a B school for next year. With the exception of the sports of cross country, field hockey, volleyball, which have modified numbers. We will be a C school for that, for those sports, and a D for boys lacrosse. Now I put an asterisk next to football and boys lacrosse because those are sports that we currently merge with, and the formula for calculating merged beds numbers is going to change as well. For B schools, you will now be calculating 100% of the beds number, whereas it used to be 40% of the beds number. So there's a change because what was happening across the state, they felt that schools were taking advantage of the percentages so as to create super teams. We're just trying to keep opportunities for kids here. With the new number in 2 years, which would be 2019-2020, our beds number should be 263. And if those new cut numbers change, we would go back to a C school in 2019-2020. So, yeah, there's some interesting math. Now, if I can, and if I take our enrollment numbers down through the middle school, we would then stay, we should, as long as the cut numbers don't change, stay a C school from there on out until we get smaller, but at that point, the cut numbers will probably change again.
Just to be clear, because last year you said we were going back to a C school. So they changed the cut numbers. They really just don't want us to be a C school.
So what they're attempting, they always attempt to keep 20% at every class. 20% at AA, 20% at A, right? There was one proposal that came out of the football committee to add a sixth classification. So if you look at football, you could have the largest districts, which have 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, and they could be playing a school with 1,000. And there's concern over safety. Yeah. So that's why they're constantly working with those numbers. My concern is not necessarily for those big schools, it's for the small schools, and we're getting to the point where you're getting few and few D schools because that percentage is changing. So in our area, there are very few D schools, but yet if you go up to the North Country, it's nothing but D schools. So it's really a tough balance. NISFA, this end of last year, partnered with a live tech to have an online hazing prevention course. We looked at it. We started this winter having our winter sport teams go through it. It's an online, there's some videos, there's discussion. It takes about a half an hour for each team. It's really just to be preventative. We haven't had any issues with hazing, but when you see hazing across the state, it's never a good thing. So to get out in front of everything, we started our hazing prevention here. Figured it was easiest to start in the winter with the fewer amount of teams, and we'll see how that goes. On a positive with NISFA, there's no increase to their dues again this year. So that's staying the same. Section 9 and the MHL update. Really no significant changes with the exception of some dues with the regional office of interscholastic athletics. A couple of years ago, the Mid-Hudson Athletic League and the Orange County League combined into the regional office of interscholastic athletics. Those are the individuals that do all of our assigning for officials, take care of all the cancellations. The dues are based upon your class size. So everybody, regardless of class, is going up $500. So for us, that equates to a 3.13% increase. It hasn't been increased since we started this, and that was 3 years ago. So this is really the first increase. That increase is being driven by the Orange Ulster BOCES. It's all contractual. There's really nothing that the league itself can do about that. The only other change, in addition to that increase, is the officials contract. After, I think it was 3 years without a contract, the officials signed a contract. So all of the officials are part of an officials union, and they finally settled their contract. Each sport is getting an increase of, roughly speaking, $2 per sport from now until 2021, 2022. Again, that's contractual, so there's really very little.
And what is that $2? Is it per official, per hour?
Per official, per game.
Oh.
So it per contest, because it varies depending upon the sport. So like within their contract, and the contract is located on the Section 9 website, so everybody can see it. It is a public document. So for like a track and field invitational, that's already set as to how much that would cost. That's obviously more than what a dual meet would cost. But if you add a third team to a track meet, that's a tri-meet, you have to add another official, that adds a little more cost. So, basketball, they keep trying to push us, and you'll see it in soccer when you get into the postseason, to three-man crews. So a three-man crew would get less money per individual than a two-man crew, but the overall cost is more.
And is the $500 a flat $500?
Flat $500 on top of what we're paying already, and that's somewhere around $16,000 for the year. That takes care of the assigning of officials, the paying of officials, the cancellation of officials. So on a day of an early dismissal, I just call the regional office and say, we're canceling our games. They call the officials. We used to have to call the officials ourselves. We used to have to call the officials to confirm each day. Going to the regional office, they take care of all that now, which has made this a little bit easier. This fall was another successful season for us. We had division championships in boys cross country, which was new this year. They tried a divisional schedule, and our boys were extremely excited about that, which was great. We also won the division championship in boys and girls soccer. Advanced to the league championship game against Red Hook. It was a Red Hook Rhinebeck doubleheader down at Wallkill. Nice chilly evening. Section 9 championships. First Class B championships for our soccer teams, boys and girls. They advanced into state play, made it to the regional semifinals, and hopefully looking forward to next year advancing even further. We had one of our swimmers advance into the state meet. We have a few swimmers here with us. Right? We had one of our swimmers advance to the state meet. Maya Vitale went to the state meet for the 100 backstroke. Did well in the preliminaries. Didn't advance to the finals. But as a 9th grader, looking for good things for her in the future. This fall, out of the 94 varsity athletes that we had, 42 were recognized as all MHAL academic and New York State Scholar athletes. That means their average during the first quarter was over a 90. So 45% of our varsity athletes academically were extremely successful, having an average over a 90. New York State Scholar athlete teams, to be a New York State Scholar athlete team, 75% of the team has to have a cumulative average over a 90. This fall, 6 of our 9 fall teams, girls cross country, field hockey, boys golf, girls soccer, girls swimming, and volleyball all had an average, cumulative average over a 90. Great job by them. They are all recognized at our Varsity Sport Recognition Night, which this year is on June 6th, Wednesday, 7 o'clock in the auditorium. This is your official invitation, in case I forget to send it. Looking ahead to 2018-2019, as I was meeting with the Long Range Planning Committee, we were talking about, what we're looking at for the future. A couple of things are coming up. We do have our current merged teams with football and lacrosse. Football, now this is an interesting conversation because there's been some changes within the last, I would say, week, I think it was. Within the section, there's a group that's starting 8-man football from 11-man football. So with 11-man football, you have to dress 16 athletes in order to be able to play in that game. There are the smaller schools that have a hard time being successful getting 16 kids to dress and then being able to finish the game. Out in Section 3 in the Utica area, they had trialed 8-man football. Section 9 has stepped up and decided to go to 8-man football, or at least have a group of schools go to 8-man football. When they started this discussion, it was a discussion that I sat in on just to get information. Not that we were thinking to go to 8-man football, but just to hear what they had to say. As long as I've been doing this, we've never had enough kids in our program to ever have our own football team. Having only addressed 12, now you start to think, maybe. Pine Plains, at that point, had listened to the conversation as well. At that point, they wanted to stay with 11-man football. So our intention was to stay with Pine Plains for next year. Probably, I think, just about a week ago, Marty Handler, the superintendent of Pine Plains, gave Joe a call and let Joe know that Pine Plains is going to go to 8-man football. So they want to know where we were at, and we're still, Joe and I spoke about it, and we're still not in the place where we're ready to start our own team here. And we'd like to be able to keep the opportunity for our kids to go over and play football in Pine Plains. That being said, it would be in our best interest just to look and see where 8-man football would take us. What are the stumbling blocks? Obviously, budget is going to be an issue. but how much are we looking at? So over the next few weeks, I'm going to start costing that out, seeing what our cost would be. I know a few years ago when we were looking at 11-man football, I think the first year I was the athletic director, we sent 19 kids to FDR, 19 varsity kids to FDR. And that was the year that we could have done it. And I think the cost, if I remember correctly, was somewhere around $40,000 to start up. So I'm not really sure if things have gotten considerably cheaper. We would need less equipment, obviously, for 8-man, but so I'm thinking that cost is going to be a stumbling block. In addition to that, obviously, field space is an issue. But let's see what we can come up with. I have had a few students come to me, and now that Pine Plains is going to 8-man football, they've said, could we have our own team? Well, maybe. Let's look at it.
But not for this coming year? Not
for this coming year. It's just, there's not,
And how many kids were in Pine Plains, and how many kids were in Rhinebeck on the merged football team?
So last year, we sent 7 varsity kids. When I say varsity, so they were running a modified A varsity football program, modified A being 7, 8, 9, varsity being 10, 11, 12. Okay. So we sent 3 10th graders and 4 11th graders to Pine Plains. Maya, from just talking to those kids in the hallway, their intention is to play next year as well. So we're going to be sending 7 kids over there. Pine Plains had a roster of 20 last year on their varsity total. So our 7 and their 13, and I'm not sure how many of those kids were upperclassmen. I know there were at least 2 or 3 that were upperclassmen. The modified team in Pine Plains had 36 kids on the team, of which 7 were from Rhinebeck. We had 5 9th graders go and 2 7th graders. So that's,
So Pine Plains goes to 8-man football. Does that mean we could still merge potentially, or it's off the table?
Yes, we can merge. Pine Plains wants us to still merge. It's going to be different football than what our kids are used to playing. It's going to be football where you don't have to play on both sides of the ball, where you don't have to be the quarterback and then turn around and be the linebacker. It's kind of football the way football maybe is supposed to be played, if you watch it on TV. So.
But they are very interested in having us continue to merge with them. It's the first year for them doing 8-man. It would be the first year for us through the merge program. I think it's an opportunity to see how it works. Where it goes after that, as Steve mentioned, is at the whim of a lot of factors. But yeah, they just wanted to find out from us, are you guys going to merge with us even though it's 8-man football, or are you going to not merge with us and have your own program? And for any number of reasons, for 18-19, it doesn't make sense financially or space-wise or probably any other way to try to go 8-man football ourselves this year, if ever. We're going to have to see how it plays out.
See how it plays out. That's a big one, because I've watched some 8-man football. It seems pretty exciting. It's more like, I think, arena football. It's very high scoring. They changed the dimensions of the field, but still it's more of a wide open game. That's what it looks like. Another concern that I have, where's the feeder program for us? So having only 2 7th graders play football, yeah, we may say we've got 12 kids for next year, but I can't guarantee I've got 12 kids that are going to be coming up that are going to play football. So I think we need to really see a couple of years and judge from that.
But it would also mean 2 teams, a varsity level and then a modified A.
If we were to go on
our own, because
if not, without having that feeder program.
Yeah, you're not going to.
And I know the top water is really down in the area as well. You're seeing, football is a sport that is
dangerous.
It's dying.
And the other thing to consider is we have a capital project that's going to be starting at some level this summer, and is going to go for at least 2 summers. So on top of everything else, even if it were a perfect world, which it's not, field space is going to be an issue, even if nothing else was an issue. So it may be a few years before we can even make that decision.
With the talk of merger, so our field hockey program, there are 13 kids returning to varsity from last year's varsity team. We have 12 kids who would be seniors next year, and 1 kid will be a junior next year who will have played within the program. Looking at that number, that's a scary number to run a varsity season. Just because you know, bank on injuries at some point, illness at some point, and the last thing I want to do is put our kids in a situation where they can't be successful. I was approached by Pine Plains about the potential for a field hockey merger. So that's something that is out there that we could, in order to keep the opportunity alive for our kids to play field hockey. Now, maybe we get 7 or 8 more kids that come out and say, I want to play field hockey. I know that that Mrs. Fleischauer has been doing a younger kid program, but those kids are considerably younger at this point, so we need them to come up. From talking to Pine Plains, he was saying, their athletic director, you know, this doesn't have to be something that's permanent. You know, maybe it just keeps your program going long enough where you can build your feeder program back up and keep going. Field hockey, again, in the area is a sport that has taken a huge hit as soon as they move soccer to the fall. They being the New York State Public High School Athletic Association. There's just no feeder programs, and all the kids seem to be going towards soccer. So that is something that there is potential for. We haven't costed that out. It was really just an initial discussion with Pine Plains. Would you be interested? I said, well, it'd be something that we would definitely want to talk about. So just curious as to...
How many students does Pine Plains have?
He did not tell me that number. His concern is that he does not have a full program, JV modified varsity. So he sees the same thing happening that we're running into. So the hope is that you can get enough kids together, and rather than have 9th and 10th graders having to play varsity, if you get enough 9th and 10th graders together, you could have a JV team, and those kids could experience that success and then build up through it.
Would any economies of scale be possible if you were having 2 merged teams in the same season in terms of transportation?
That would be, yeah.
Yeah, big plus.
Yeah, we wouldn't be adding another bus runner for
Right.
that.
Okay.
I'm just wondering, you know, as we start to look at more merged teams, if you've given a thought to, I mean, the priority is giving kids opportunities to play, but having a little bit more ownership instead of, you know, playing for Pine Plains, it being more of a true merged program. You know, obviously there's a cost if you want to change uniforms, but just ways to do that. You know, you read the paper and it's Pine Plains football, but, you know, we don't want to lose our identity.
All the information that I send out, I always try to say merged Pine Plains Rhinebeck. I know that FDR, they got a little bit upset about that when it used to be in the paper, FDR Rhinebeck. The FDR athletic, no, this is our team. Okay, well, our boys are coming down there, they're really helping you out, you know, so yeah, there's a definite issue with that.
Yeah.
I know that when we first talked about the football merger, the Pine Plains, the guy who was the coach at the time was trying to come up with a logo with a hawk and a plane and you know, something along those lines to try to bring things together.
But they've changed coaches and athletic directors.
They have changed coaches and athletic directors since then, so.
So I don't know if that's part of an agreement when we make agreements or something, but, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, it's our kids, our money, it'd be nice to, you know.
Not be subsumed.
Yes.
I gave you also the participation numbers that we have for this last fall. and the winter. The spring numbers are obviously from last spring, just so that you have an idea of where we're at. I also included from my own notes all of the numbers that I've had since I've been here, so we can see where our participation is. This fall, when you look at the fact that we had 163 kids playing JV and varsity, that amounts to 44% of our high school population. And when we look at that, we had 71 out of the 165 middle school kids. That's 45% of the middle school actively involved in interscholastic athletics. And looking at the academics, we know that athletics and academics, they go hand in hand. That's how that behavior issues are much better, right?
Blank stares.
It's the swimmers.
They're tough.
Will you take questions?
Yes.
Would you mind just laying out what the fall, winter, and spring sports are? With these
Yes, I can.
participation numbers?
So, in the fall, we have, and I don't know why I didn't print this out for you, I should have. We offer varsity and modified boys and girls cross country. We offer varsity field hockey. The football merger is modified A and varsity. We have varsity golf, which is boys golf. We offer modified JV and varsity boys and girls soccer. We have varsity girls swimming, and we have modified JV and varsity volleyball. In the winter's the easy one. We have varsity boys swimming and modified JV and varsity boys and girls basketball. If it'll make it easier for you, I can send this to Joe and he can forward it on to you.
It's fine.
In the spring, we offer novice and varsity boys and girls crew. We have modified JV and varsity baseball. This year we're going back to varsity boys lacrosse. Modified JV and varsity softball. Varsity boys tennis. And modified and varsity boys and girls track and field.
The boys tennis allows girls to play though.
And boys golf allows girls to play as well.
Okay.
And we have, during my time here at Rhinebeck, we have had girls on the golf team. During my time at Rhinebeck and also as the athletic director, we have had girls on the tennis team.
Then why do you distinguish it being the boys team?
Because there are girls teams that are offered within the league, within the section of the state.
In different seasons?
In different seasons, yeah. So girls tennis is a fall sport, which when you look at our fall offerings, I'm not sure we would be able to find any girls.
Yeah.
There were a couple of, I think it was 2 years ago, we actually had 4 girls on our tennis team. And people in the league are like, why don't you start a girls tennis team? I said, well, because they all play soccer. And if given the opportunity to play soccer or tennis, they're going to play soccer, and then I'm not going to have anybody play tennis.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah. I did just have recently one student come up to me and ask about girls golf. Girls golf is a spring sport. So we'll see if I get a few more girls asking about girls golf. And then we have to look at what that would cost us in terms of Rhinebeck Golf Course. I believe our membership is for the entire year.
Or is that open to all sports? As far as, if there's like the boys lacrosse or the...
Yes, it is. So that is state ed governed. So that's the mixed competition component. If a girl wanted to play lacrosse, boys lacrosse, they'd have to go through the mixed competition panel, which is similar to what is now the advanced athletic placement test, which used to be selective classification. So they would have to do a physical test, and then we'd have to convene a panel with the school physician, superintendent, athletic director, phys ed teacher to discuss whether or not that would have negative implications on the girl or the boys.
Yeah.
There was within the state one of the big press items was a boy playing on a girls volleyball team. It was probably 5 or 6 years ago now. He was an impact player. Boys volleyball net is 7'11", girls volleyball net is 7'4", pretty big difference. But it team out in the state Final Four.
And if there's a comparable girls or boys sport like softball and baseball, then you got to play the sport for
girls could play baseball, boys could not play softball. If baseball is on.
Okay. So if I understand correctly, there's really no bar to female athletes going as far as they can in the sport if they're approved to compete on that male team. Okay, great.
Or vice versa.
Or vice versa.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments? I actually just have a request which came out of the Long Range Planning Committee's conversations with you, which is we're hoping that you and Tom Burnell can calculate what the cost per athlete will be for each sports team. So that would be very helpful to us in our work. So.
Yeah, Tom and I actually talked today about it. We're gathering data. We're going to do it for the 16, 17 years so it's complete. And I would say, barring any more snow days, a couple of weeks, I would think.
Yeah, it takes a while to put that one together. That's at least takes 8 hours for me to do.
Yeah. We really appreciate it and we thank you. We know it's extra time and extra work. So thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your meeting.
You're not staying?
Principals reports. Principals reports.
Good evening, everyone. A few things that are happening at Chancellor. I had mentioned a couple meetings ago us taking a look at our faculty meeting format and trying to, it is one of those opportunities on a monthly basis where you have the whole staff in front of you and you try to fit in maybe a few housekeeping things that you want to fit in, but really we want to spend the majority of time working together on specific topics. So, and putting staff members and myself in positions to present to each other and work together. So I just wanted to give you another update. We had our own Noelle Starzik, OT, presented to staff a workshop on student sensory needs and strategies to help with trauma. So she spent some time talking to us about that at our last meeting. Coming up, we have Jill Simmons, one of our 5th grade teachers, will be presenting on flexible seating classrooms, something she piloted this year. So to just kind of give some of her feedback to her colleagues about the challenges and the successes of doing so. Future presentations are going to include things like Class Dojo, which is something that's starting to gain a little traction with staff, as well as growth mindset, things like that. So I just wanted to know we're kind of moving in that direction this year, which is great. December 11th and 12th, it's been a little while, but we had our Center for Prevention of Child Abuse come and work with K-5 once again. It was an outstanding experience. For our 2nd year in a row, very successful. They did a wonderful job as they always have, so we're hoping to bring them back around the same time next year. Shortly after that, on December 14th, we had our annual grade 4 and 5 winter concerts at Chancellor the same night. The spring we separate them, but in the winter we have them the same evening. That was a success, very well attended. Just again a reminder, if you haven't heard, Kevin Yarnell and myself. Heard what? So just again, extensive campaign for the Dannon Project Fit America grant we're going for Chancellor. Over the last 6 weeks has included radio appearances, media interviews, presentations to our Rotary and Chamber of Commerce. Were kind enough to help out as well. So I just wanted to, in this public forum's first time since we started this campaign, to just really thank everyone. I think the businesses, Rhinebeck in general, just the village and town have been so supportive. People are just coming out of the woodwork like every day to say, hey, how can I help? How can I help? I've been sending out daily messenger messages to families almost every day. Don't forget to vote over the weekend, things like that. So people have been very supportive, and I wanted to thank everyone. And don't forget to vote every day. Special Our specials team, if you remember, I had mentioned that one of the upcoming units that they spent time doing curriculum development over the summer was around an Olympic unit that they're doing in all the special areas to coincide with the Winter Olympics. So we had our opening ceremonies last week, where each class was assigned a specific country, and then there's going to be themed activities throughout the month or so, beginning in February. That'll coincide with the Olympics. So it's really bringing a lot of multidisciplinary kind of content into all of our specials. So I'll be happy to give you an update on that when I see you in February. A couple of things, because we didn't get to see you in December, and historically the last couple of years I've been able to be here around that time frame. I've really focused most of my principal reports on some of the things we do in the spirit of the season. The courtesy and respect and integrity that my students and staff in this community really exhibit during that time. I like to showcase in my principal reports. I picked a couple just to share with you. One, I wanted to let you know that it always amazes me how many students and staff rally behind a project we've been doing for quite a few years, where they create original holiday cards for the people who live at Ferncliff, for the nursing home, and they get hand-delivered. And this year we had just a wonderful amount, more than I think we ever have. So I wanted to just thank my staff and students for that. Another thing, a great way to go out, as you may or may not know, our very own Barbara Rizolo will be retiring this year, and she's the one that has always spearheaded for the last 21 years the Hands Helping Hands initiative, where we have the mitten tree, and people attach mittens and scarves and hats, and they go to Astor Homes services for children. This year, by far, we were up to somewhere in the mid-200s, which was a great number. We wound up with 1,013 items, first time ever. Her last year doing it, we're hoping we can get somebody to pick it up and move forward with it. And actually, I believe Jenna Yarnell has thrown her hat in the ring to pick up that initiative. But one, I certainly wanted to congratulate Barbara and the community. We had people coming in every day. But really what put us over the top was a parent by the name of Jennifer Cianelli Fischetti. She helped with extra items that put us well over the top. In the 11th hour, she was doing a similar fundraiser at her school and thought she would include us. So she really put us over the top. So those are two just highlights of some of the stuff that we do through the holiday season that I like to let you know about. I did mention CLS Press last time. We did get our first issue out shortly after I saw you for the month of December. I have a copy here. It's not as consistent as last year. I'm hoping to kind of get some more, gauge some more interest. I have 3 students now that are my staff, so we'll hope to be getting them out more often like we did last year. But there was an interview with Mr. Stuyvesant. We had a book review, Mr. Bixby's last day. Quite a few different things. They did stick with some of the same type of format where there's recipes and jokes and things like that, so that's all in there, a word search they have created. So we'll be working on getting more editions out. By the way, this was another one of the latest Northern Dutchess news. We always like to work with them and thank Curtis Schmidt, who's a big supporter of everything we do at Chancellor, and he helped put us on the front page going back to the fitness grant. A couple things in the works. I'm working on something along the lines of the best kind of name I have for it, I guess, right now is working on a living history kind of civics, kind of a civic engagement through historical context with Mr. Stuyvesant's class. Some of the possibilities we have is finding a day where we can do maybe some Skype or actually have her physically in our building. May Cryer, one of the original Rosies, Rosie the Riveter, she's actually the reason there's a Rosie the Riveter Day on March 21st, so a big part of it. That happens to be her birthday, actually. I've connected with her, and we're hoping to maybe have her kind of address some of our 5th grade students. Also have things like a Skype interview possibly with Secretary of the Air Force, Dr. Heather Wilson, those types of things to really talk about civility and how kids can get involved, and just what professionals out there are doing to be involved. And, so anyway, I'll keep you, it's kind of in the infant stages, but we're working on planning that. December 4th was our grade 4's annual Native American Day, as we do each year. They focused on things like cooking and food and net making, Native American games, things like that. So the 4th grade kind of invited anyone to participate with them. So that's very much related to the social studies curriculum in 4th grade. So they spend a lot of time each year kind of focusing on Native American Day. And in December, I wanted to thank Matthew Fisher and the senior class members of Spanish 5 for organizing a visit, and certainly my colleagues, and Ed helped me organize that. But it was really their idea. They worked with Mr. Morrissey in grade 3 and Mrs. Tate in grade 4. And students had the opportunity to utilize basic Spanish phrases and words and practice conversations with several partners. So it was a great kind of, I would love to maybe get more of that going next year, but I wanted to not only thank Mr. Fisher and certainly those students, but Mr. Morrissey and Mrs. Tate for bringing them into their class and giving their students insight on that subject. Last but certainly not least, I wanted to thank Kevin Lyons, who built a mobile buddy bench for us to be used on the blacktop at CLS during recess when we have blacktop only. We realized our buddy bench is actually cemented in the ground, like very far away. So he was kind enough, as part of his Eagle Scout project, to build one for us. It looks beautiful. Did a wonderful job. Carriage bolts and all that stuff, so it should last quite a while. And we're just proud to be a part of the process for one of our past CLS students. So thank you, Kevin. I know we worked very hard on that. Some upcoming events. On the 29th of this month, we have a dictionary project with grade 3 in the Rhinebeck Rotary we do each year, so they reached out to us and set up that date. K-Reg registration will, for the fall of 2018 will start February 5th and continue through March 16th, and screenings will be in May. And the upcoming Superintendent's Conference Day on the 16th will be a tech day of offerings. And our own Steve Jensen is working with staff to organize that day, so we're looking forward to that in the coming month.
Laura.
Great stuff always. I love the civic engagement piece. That's really fantastic. But I noticed in the dates, the upcoming dates, that you're doing something parents as partners. Can you tell us?
Yes, I believe that's actually something I believe Emily Davidson started to work on. That's not something that I'm very much involved, but I think it's relatively new. She's been doing. I actually noticed it on the calendar, and I asked her if she needed me to put information out. But just kind of keeping that homeschool connection and reaching out to those students.
Great, great. Thank you.
Could I ask that for future reference, if you could send copies of the CLS Press and the weekly newsletter over to the high school so that they can be put in our board packets? That way we can get copies and
that'd be great.
Those.
Yeah.
But yes.
Thank you.
Other questions?
It'd be fine if you have 8 copies of what you have in your hand there. We give it to the board members after the fact, but I think I'd like to see a copy myself.
Yeah, you got it.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good evening. Unbeknownst to me, Brett talked a little bit about service learning projects, and that's I'm going back to December as well, and I decided to lead my board report off with a couple of service learning project updates because we didn't have an opportunity to speak in December. So I know that I spoke back in November about our annual Knit for the NICU campaign. Jennifer Familetti has been doing this. This is now the 8th year, and I was there are several things I'll talk about this evening, and as I start to put things together, I say, the 9th annual, the 8th annual, the 7th annual. It's hard to believe that many of these projects have been around for this long. But I know I've spoken in the past. This is a multi-generational project. We've got middle school students, we've got high school students, we've got parents. We've got community members that come together. Some are veteran knitters, some are just learning how to knit, some just want to be part of it and contribute in some way. And over the course of the years, I went back and I looked at my board reports, and I usually report out a number, and we made 40 items. We made, I think last year we made 60 items, 67 to be exact. And as I stood before you at this time last year, I said, we were taking a picture. I take a picture every year of the items piled up next to Mrs. Familetti, and she's relatively short, and it always makes that pile look pretty significant. And I think when we piled up our 67 items last year, we talked about trying to create a pile that was as tall as she was. So that being said, I want to tell you that this year after 67 was our all-time high, and I actually printed out a picture. We had to put it in 2 piles. Because because we couldn't stack them high enough without them falling over. She donated on Christmas Eve to the Vassar NICU more than 130 items. So it was very impressive. The first 130 babies that are born at Vassar Hospital are going home with something handmade by a Rhinebeck student, or a parent, or a staff member, or a community member. So that was pretty impressive. And not to be outdone, our student council runs a canned food drive every year, and again, we've managed to put together in a week's time 500 items, 600 items that we're able to donate to the Good Shepherd food pantry. And I'm not sure why. I don't know if it was a better advertising campaign this year, but this year, just prior to the holidays, we donated almost 1,100 items to the food pantry. So they were certainly pleased. So again, our students are doing great things for outside organizations and for people. Some things going on in our classrooms. Thanks to support from the Arts and Education Committee, our 8th grade ELA classes are once again completing their project titled Taking a Stand, Civil Rights in America. I know many of you have attended some of our gallery openings in the past. You know that the work that the students produce is extremely creative and moving. The students have been working with local installation artist Mimi Gruminski, as well as Pat Sexton, and looking at social injustice through art by creating their own art installations to honor those who have taken a stand throughout history. While it's just a tentative date, I won't have an opportunity to speak before you before this takes place, so I want to let you know that the student work will be on display in the coming weeks, and we're looking at February 13th the evening of February 13th for our gallery opening. I'll certainly pass that on to Joe and invite all of you to attend. During the month of December, members of the BMS Peer Leadership Club spent quite a bit of time working with student mentors from Bard College, preparing experiments and activities which they ran for CLS students just last week during the CLS Science Night Out. On January 10th, BMS students attended a presentation by Dr. Michael Fallon. Dr. Mikey, as he's better known, is an actor, poet, psychologist, and educator whose message of inclusion and respect for individual differences proved to be a very powerful one. I'm hoping that all of you had an opportunity to have some meaningful conversation around the dinner table that evening. All of the feedback that we received following that presentation was extremely positive. And I really have Dr. Davenport and his building level planning team to thank for that. They did all the research. They invited us to participate and have middle school students sit before them as well. So very thankful for taking part in that presentation. In a similar vein, plans are underway right now to bring John Halligan back to the district. And some of you may recall, though it's been many, many years since Mr. Halligan presented here in Rhinebeck and to both the middle school students on the dangers of bullying and cyberbullying and suicidal ideation. Certainly similar to Dr. Fallon's presentation, it's a difficult topic, but in today's day and age, these topics on social, emotional, and mental health are certainly very prevalent for our students. Thanks to support from the PTSO, Mr. Halligan will be presenting to middle school students, he'll be presenting to high school students, and he is also going to do a community presentation to parents that evening. So I'll pass more information. We're looking at May 1st as a date for that, so I'll pass more information on to you as it gets closer, of course. Thanks once again to the support of the Rhinebeck Science Foundation. Our 8th grade students traveled to Bard College today, as a matter of fact, to participate in the Day of Science. This day has evolved over the years, and most recently it's become thematic in years past. various branches of science. They've done great hands-on, engaging projects with the students. But they've all been individual projects that are really kind of thought up by the students and the professors in those individual departments. Of late, last year and this year, the feedback I got from the teachers and from Ms. Kogel in particular today was phenomenal. They worked on thematic projects that were all around learning about the Hudson Valley watershed. So students built their own aquifers. They designed and built water filters. They created mud batteries. They learned how to measure the salinity of liquids and participated in a contaminant spill simulation while learning about pollution. So it's just, I'm excited to get into some science classrooms tomorrow and talk to some of the 8th grade students about their day. This Friday and Saturday, several BMS students will be participating in the DC MEA Junior High All-County Festival at FDR High School. These students are selected based on their NISMA solo scores from the previous spring for band and through recorded auditions for chorus, so it's very selective and a fine honor. We had a wonderful band concert that took place in the middle of December, and I invite all of you to attend and join us next Thursday for the BMS Choral Concert. On February 10th, we have several BMS students that will be participating in the 8th grade science fair in its 3rd year. So this is a relatively new event, comparatively speaking. This event is a joint venture comprised of students from both BMS and Linden Avenue Middle School in Red Hook. And Ms. Kogel has been working with another master science teacher over at Linden Avenue Middle School. Participation in this event has grown each of the 3 years that we've done it, and we're really continuing to look to encourage more and more students to get involved. Students will present their original research projects from hypothesis to data collection, analysis of findings, to a panel of judges to compete for prizes and to bid in the 59th annual Dutchess County Regional Science Fair. And you'll recall that last year one of our 8th grade students won and actually went on to compete in that competition. In addition, during the tallying of the results, students will attend a presentation given by Chris Lafrada, the Associate Professor of Chemistry over at Bard College. So, wonderful opportunity. And finally, plans are underway for the 9th annual BMS Top Chef competition. This is going to take place on February 26th. It was started years ago to encourage nutritional awareness and to connect students with members of the local culinary community, and it's become a fan favorite. It's not something that we can allow to fall by the wayside. So once again, our students' culinary talents are going to be judged by celebrity judges, featuring many local chefs and several faculty members. So a few of the things going on BMS.
Any questions or comments? Yes, Laura.
All great stuff, thank you. Joe shared with us the letter that you sent out to BMS parents about Health and Wellness Day coming up.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if you're going to try to broadcast more widely beyond just BMS families, because there may be, high school or elementary age parents that might be interested in participating.
I can certainly do that. I mean, we can put it out to the community K-12. We're also beating the pavement and putting out our feelers. Again, we've conducted this, these sorts of days around a theme. Health and wellness is a little bit more selective. Not in addition to looking for individuals that are willing to share their expertise in a particular field, we're also trying to focus some of our presentations on getting students actively engaged in a variety of activities. And, we've had presenters on yoga and Pilates and kickboxing and karate and all sorts of active pursuits. But anything that anyone can do, and I will certainly put that out K-12 to promote that. As you recall, we weren't able to run the program last year for the first time in my 13 years here in this district. We were extremely disappointed. Fortunately, our efforts are starting to bring some people to the forefront. I just met with my team leaders today, and I think we have 7 presenters, and we look for the 20 to 24 range. So I think we're on the right track. But anything anyone can do to help promote that and build a presenter pool for us, it's not something we can do on our own. So thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Hello again. As usual, I'd like to begin with an update on our building level planning team. As Mr. Kinzer mentioned, on January 10th, Dr. Fallon spoke with our students. I'd like to thank the Office of Curriculum and Instruction, Mr. Krebs, for their support in bringing Dr. Fallon to us. The BLPT is working on planning next steps after that very powerful assembly. We'll be reaching out as well to student extracurricular activities, including the Student Council, Gender Equity Club, Eastern Alliance, for student input to plan some meaningful follow-up activities for that presentation. The BLPT is also finalizing plans for the winter day of service. In the last Saturday in February, our students will be able to volunteer at the Star Library. So we'll be publicizing that opportunity through our coordinator of community service, Mr. Judd, and I look forward to reporting back on our student participation. In academic updates in the English department, our English 12 students have completed their passion project thanks to the Star Library and thanks to the many volunteers who met with students to help them augment their research. Students have completed their projects. English teachers have selected 4 exemplars, and the authors of those projects will be presenting their work to their peers this Friday in the first inaugural Talk, which is modeled on a TED Talk. You're all invited, please. That will begin at 9:30 in the morning. Thanks to Mr. Kennitzer for offering the use of the BMS cafeteria for these presentations. In our journalism class, our student journalists have completed another inaugural activity. And this is the Village newsletter, which I was able to take a look at today. I look forward to sending you a PDF so you can sample the work as well. In the math department, our faculty members have been learning about standards-based grading. This is a complement to the flipped classroom. I'm learning about standards-based grading along with my colleagues, and the best I can describe it, my understanding is not perfect at this point, is that it seems very similar to mastery learning. And as you recall, mastery learning is a focus on student understanding rather than on just earning grades. It's a movement away from high-stakes, one-and-done testing, rather it's an emphasis on allowing students multiple opportunities to learn and demonstrate their understanding. So similarly, I look forward to updating you on our growing understanding as a faculty about standards-based grading. In the science department, Mr. Rocco has finished his augmented reality sandbox thanks to the RSF. Students are, according to Mr. Rocco, keenly interested in being able to look at that and also play with it, experiment in earth science. As you probably recall, our science department has been participating in the Science Lab initiative. This is sponsored by Assemblyman Cahill's office. It's administered through SUNY New Paltz. We received word recently that the process for securing funds to grant to different schools will be finalized next month. So we will be, as a school, submitting our proposal in mid-March for review from the Science Lab Initiative. We're requesting the purchase of lab equipment, gel electrophoresis equipment. We're requesting 4 spectrophotometers and some earth science equipment, which models cyclonic and seismic activity. So we're thankful to Assemblyman Cahill and the offices of SUNY New Paltz. In our music department, the men's ensemble and women's choir performed before winter break at the Chamber of Commerce practice. After that concert, they move on and perform for the students at the Astor Hall, which is always a very positive and excellent experience for our kids. In the art department, If you're wandering around the high school, if you stop right outside the nurse's office, you'll see some examples of pop art. Our students just completed their study of pop art, and they've created sculptures that are based on food, which are very whimsical and very lifelike in some instances, and very surreal in other instances. So I invite you to sample that. This evening, Columbia Green Community College had its annual jury art show. Two of our student artists had their work accepted for this show, and one of our students won an award for their work. Mrs. Giles is going to inform me who that was. They're not unveiled. We don't know who that is until the show. The show opened today, so I'll be happy to update you on that information. In the guidance department, as I think I've mentioned individually, our counselors have begun scheduling meetings with students. So we're in order to hit our target of a master schedule by the end of April, early May. In the co-curricular realm, rehearsals for our school musical Mary Poppins have begun in earnest. The Creative Writing Club is finalizing the next issue of their literary anthology. As I mentioned in another context, in the Model UN Club, we received word that the Nobel Summit has been postponed to take place in September of 2018. So those preparations and plans are on hold currently. This year, the plans are underway to hold a UN conference in New York City with the theme of human rights, and we're hopeful that our students in Model UN will be able to participate in that. Student Council is sponsoring the pep rally, which is going to be held on February 2nd. Spirit Week is next week. And lastly, our choral concert will take place this Thursday evening.
Thank you. Questions or comments? It's wonderful to hear about all the great things happening in the high school. Thank you for keeping us up to date.
Thank you.
All right, we are going to get perhaps a 2018-19 budget development update. Perhaps.
Well, there have been a number of things that have happened. One thing that hasn't happened is the development of the second draft budget.
Right.
But as I'm sure you're all aware, our governor proposed his budget for the 2018-19 year, and our increase in foundation aid was a somewhat measly $5,000, and with some initial projections of a slight decrease in expense-based aids, BOCES being one of several. Right now looks, and I put a blue sheet in your stuff at your places tonight. We're looking to see a decrease in our aid by about $7,000 and change. So that's not great news. Kind of companion piece to that was the Dutchess County School Boards Association legislative breakfast that was held this past Saturday. The Marriott Courtyard in Poughkeepsie, among several other Board of Education members. Mark Fleischauer spoke to the topic of special education expenses, and his information is also in the packet of stuff at your table tonight. It was also in what I emailed home to you this afternoon. Mark did an excellent job, short and to the point. Unfortunately, only one of the legislators, Assemblyperson Barrett, was actually there personally. The rest of them sent representatives there. I did have a good conversation with, I can't remember his last name, his first name's Joe, I guess that's why I remember that, from Assemblyman Cahill's office. We spoke quite a bit before the start of the event. I was well done, focused on state aid picture, which is not very good around the table. I mean, many of the Dutchess County schools are looking to get 0.2% increase in foundation aid, so it's not looking real good on the state aid side of things. What else? One thing I did want to mention is, and we can discuss it later under other perhaps, as to whether you want us to set up meetings with our 3 legislators again this year like we've done for the last several. Again, I don't think it's too soon to start that process. That's an interest that the board has, because if we wait until March to try to set those dates up, they won't be able to meet with us until after the budget's done. Then it will definitely be too late to have any impact. And my opinion has always been, we may or may not get anything out of those meetings, but at least we're expressing our concerns. And if we don't show up, I'm concerned that we're sending the message that things are okay, and it's fine that we get hardly anything. So. But that's something I'll need to know from you later today as a board, and then we'll start having Whitney make phone calls and line something up with those 3 of our legislators. So those are things that I have to share regarding budget. More generally, there are some other things in your packets at your table focusing on budget, specifically some information from today's webinar on the state budget, which if you're interested, I can email you the link and you can watch it yourself if you're so inclined. I'll turn it over to Tom. I think he has a few things
Yeah, I don't
to share.
have too much, but one of the things in the Finance Committee, I was asked to prepare some potential reductions that could occur over the next month or so based on a few things. So I just wanted to give you an idea of some of the potential savings that we will incur if they do come to fruition. So I know we talked in Finance Committee about potentially reducing our need for transportation by at least 1 bus. Whether a second bus would be able to be taken off is yet to be determined, but I'm pretty confident we can definitely do 1. And that's a savings of $61,000. If we do have fewer bus runs to special education or to a private or parochial school, a defiled transportation bus would save us $36,000. Now, whether or not that will occur don't know yet until the special ed placements are determined and we receive the transportation request to private and parochial schools, which is a deadline of April 1st. We did lose 1 bus run last year in the private and parochial because they lost an anchor student. It'll be interesting to see whether or not an anchor student commits. So, also in occupational education, right now we just have a placeholder in there. Dr. Davenport they told me that about mid-February he will have students who, I guess these would be sophomores going into their junior year, to go down to the CTI, which is the Career and Technical Institute at BOCES. So for every student, I don't want to say every student, but I currently have 30 students signed up or in the budget. It will probably come in lower than that, but we really won't know that number until after that field trip is taken. But for every student under 30, it's $10,500 per student that would be able to take out of the budget. with the retirement system, they give us a range, and they'll say anywhere between 10 and 11. I think they said this year 10 and a half to 11. I start at the highest, 11. It usually comes in right in between, but for every 0.1% reduction will save us $12,000. And then another area that we could potentially see some savings is with the health insurance. I think they start negotiations next week on that. I originally have put in a 10% increase. I believe pretty confident that it will be less than 10%. How much below is another question. But for every 1% reduction is a savings of $55,000. So hopefully, if we see a 6%, then we were looking at $220,000. So it'd be nice, but to tell you the truth, I don't know where it goes. A lot will depend upon some changes that we're trying to put in at DHIC, and whether or not they're approved or not is going to be the question. But if everything gets approved, we can come back with a pretty good number. But we still have to get through the DHIC process to that. But it would mean a reduction of benefits for our employees, of not just our school district, but 26 other school districts also. So the question is whether or not that will go through. I know it has my vote. Can't say it has enough votes around the table to actually happen. So that we'll know within the next couple of weeks where that's going. I actually have a meeting at DHIC. Our meeting last week was canceled due to the storm.
Do you think by March 1st you'll know?
Should have a real good idea where we're at by March 1st. Even though they won't get set until March, we'll have a really good idea whether or not those initiatives are going to be implemented to save the money or not. So, and like Joe said, as far as the state aid is concerned, overall, it's a reduction and of a little over about $7,300. And our draft that was sent out to you, I didn't do any increases, so it's not going to affect the budget too much. And the other thing too is, usually the governor's proposal, since I've always been in the business, it's the lowest. It usually comes up, but how much it comes up is going to be a big question. Some years you see huge jumps over what the governor's proposed. I don't expect huge jumps, but I do expect some more monies, but I don't expect an extra 100,000 or something of that nature. So we'll have to put some pressure on our legislators to see what they can do. I think most helpful of all is any way we can get our combined wealth ratio down would be, fantastic, because that's what drives all our aid ratios. How your combined wealth ratio is, the less state aid you're going to get, because the formulas become pretty bad.
So, well, there are two things then. You put in our packets this, I guess it's 2017-18 proposed bill that's to change the combined wealth ratio.
Yeah.
Is this active, or was this what, I think she tried to do this, Serena tried to do this last year,
Last
right?
year, that was last year.
It's still in committee, as I checked the other day.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I did lobby for that at the breakfast the other day.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we gave a copy of that to the legislators' representatives from each of our legislators, so they have the language in front of them and they're aware of the fact that it's still out there, but they need to act on it.
Yeah. The question, it comes to this, it doesn't generate any more state aid as far as the state's concerned, just because your combined wealth ratio goes up or down. State aid is what it is as far as the entire state is. It's how it's distributed amongst the school districts. So I think one of the things that some of the legislators look at, because this type of thing should drive our combined wealth ratio down. Well, if we're going down, someone has to go up. And typically they're going to be the low wealth school districts. So that's why they kind of, don't want to do that, because it will take money away from the lower wealth ones. But in the tax cap era, we're going to be treated the same, and we're not. And that's really hurting our district in that respect.
My other question was about the excess cost aids, why you think we're taking a hit in those areas, considering the types of students we're getting coming in.
Once again, this is just an estimate.
Right.
But why it's going down, even though our numbers have gone up, once again, it goes to our combined wealth ratio. So what happens, and the biggest thing of all is the first thing, and it's called a deduct. It's how much money they deduct just right off the top. And to give you an example with public excess aid, that's our students who are at BOCES. Okay, it's public excess aid. Basically what they do is to figure out what your base deduction is. It's 3 times what they do is the following. Let me simplify it. They take your total tax, total taxes about $27 million, divided by the number of children that are in our school district. Let's say $1,000. Let's say 1,000. 27,000, got 1,000 children. We spend $27,000 per kid. Then they multiply that by 3. You multiply 27,000 by 3, you get, what was that, $81,000? So they say, okay, here's your BOCES, take $81,000 off it, because that's what you, the school district, owes, and it makes it 0. So we get nothing back on it. And that's what I think. Now, when it comes to the private excess side, I can't remember the formula exactly, but that first initial, when I was saying that 81,000, in reality it's 61,000, because it's 27 divided by, it's more than 1,000. It's over 1,100, because I think they also include the private and parochial kids too. Even though they don't come to school here, I think they're part of the formula. But that's a much lower number. It's only about $25,000 versus the 61,000. So you still start, here it is, subtract 25,000, and then they apply the aid percentage to that. It's not 100%. That's where the combined wealth ratio comes in again, and maybe we get 50% of that. And that's probably, I don't know if that was in the packet.
Is it this?
Yes, that right there. That's what drives it. And see, if you see on the one line in there, let's see if I can find it here. It's the one that folds out. Yeah,
the back of the packet.
I don't know. I can't find it. But, yeah, I'll take a look at your thing. But the biggest one of all, if you take a look at this, and you'll look at the first line, has the combined wealth ratio, and you see a lot of them are under 1. 1 is average across the state. But you do see that in our county, Millbrook, Northeast, Pauling, Pine Plains, Rhinebeck, all are above 1. Everybody is below. So those above 1 are considered wealthier than the average in New York State. Those below 1 are considered not as wealthy. Ours is 2.118, which is more than twice as wealthy as the rest of the state. But if you go down to where it says basic contribution, now, granted, this is from the year before. This is based on last year's work. We had to spend $24,261.59. Okay, the only one that comes close to us was Pauling, but that is subtracted out, giving you the 17, and then our aid ratio, which is 0.683, gives us $12,000 in state aid. So of that 42,000, we get 12,000 back. We spend 30. And if you look right below that at the public excess aid, 57,143. Last year, we had to pick up the first 59,000. That number I know is in 61,000 now. So that even makes it. So what's happening is our cost per student is rising faster, okay, than as a percentage increase, as opposed to all the other numbers. So it makes it less and less is aidable every year. So it's not going the other way. So it makes it less aidable. And that's what's hurting that's why you're seeing that number go down, is because our combined wealth ratio is saying you need to pick up more of the cost.
We also talked to our legislators about, the representatives who were there, about the 2%, the tax levy cap, and the impact of our special education cost increases and suggested that that might be a modification to the cap that would help us very, very specifically, that our special education cost increases are outstripping the ceiling of the tax levy cap.
Yeah, you saw that on that one sheet there.
So it's clear that the tax levy cap's not going to go away anytime soon, but modifying the cap could be a significant help to us. So I think those are the two things we're going to have to pound on our legislators again this spring when we meet with them. I mean, we'll sound like a broken record, but that's too bad.
Liz?
No, good.
Sorry.
You're good? Actually, question. Any other questions?
So we'll have a draft number 2 at our next board meeting. So I've gotten now I've got all the BOCES information, but I got 95% of it now. So there'll be some adjustment
We'll also have
to
a better
that.
idea what kind of retirements we may be working with as of February 5th, which will be before the next board meeting, so we'll see.
Will we get our binders?
Yes, yep, you'll get a completed binder.
I love my binder. Stacks of paper.
We're cutting the cost of binders out.
Listen, I'll bring you all the old ones.
We bring them back, we recycle them. Certainly do.
Okay, well, let's move on to board committee reports. Curriculum.
That is me, although I realized I forgot to sign it, respectfully submitted by Daphne Savalainen. Apologies.
Mystery. Minutes.
But I was writing for so long that I lost steam at the end. So I will not read all of this to you. You can read. But the highlights. Dr. Davenport told us that the high school is looking to expand its pilot College Connection concurrent enrollment program with Dutchess Community College. We would be adding English 101 and 102. And that's basically, for those of you who don't know, a concurrent program where students are taking a college class on the high school campus with a high school teacher who has been approved as an adjunct at Dutchess Community College. And Sarah Wheeler has been approved as an adjunct. So we're going to see if there are students interested in taking that English. It's 2 sections make up a year. And then there was a lot of discussion about iPads, PCs, Chromebooks, and iMacs, and whether there was a need to seek out, to settle on a single platform, and the bottom line is no. There isn't a need to have a single operating system. We would like to be diversifying platforms and teaching students to use as much as possible, having as broad an experience as possible. There are different situations where individual departments would benefit more from one system than the other. We can work with that. And then the next pages really get into some of the nitty-gritty there, which if anybody has any questions about, I'd be happy to answer, but I don't think we need to discuss all of that. And then we briefly discussed the Smart Schools Bond Act funds, that because we had to replace our server out of the general fund before the Smart Bond money was available, that frees up some funds for another use still within the Smart Schools Bond Act confines. And so we're looking for a long-term, one-time type purchase, there may be multiple things, but not things that would need more money down the road, because there wouldn't be more money down the road for that. And then we got a middle school curriculum update that Marvin sent requests to each of the BMS computer teachers and principal for an update on the implementation of the new computer science curriculum. And all the classes seem on track to move through the full curriculum by the year's end. Marvin will be visiting each class for their culminating unit, and we'll schedule meetings with the teachers to see how they're doing. The principals backed up what the teachers reported, and For next year, Marvin may be visiting the matter of curriculum sequencing and discussing best practices with the teachers. So getting a little more specific, not just rolling out the curriculum, but that sequencing plays a factor and that there are other best practices they can be implementing.
Thank you. Questions for curriculum?
I would just like to update the board on the Smart Schools Bond Act piece of this without getting into great detail. But apparently we've found out as we're trying to push this rock up the hill that the poles that we are looking to use to string fiber between here and Chancellor are co-owned by Central Hudson and Frontier. And there seems to be some reticence at this point in allowing us to string fiber because one of the two companies has fiber themselves. So anyway, working through it, we met with Mayor Bassett today and John Fenton. I don't remember exactly what his title is in the village. Just to talk about what part the village might play in the ownership and use of these poles. So we're pursuing other avenues, but I just want to let you know it's risen as an issue as the project climbed up to higher levels of Central Hudson, and that's when we found out, oh, by the way, these poles are co-owned, so now there's two players in the mix. But I'm optimistic that we'll be able to work something out.
It'll work out.
So stay tuned. Stay tuned.
All right, thank you. Communications.
All right, communications. I too will try to boil this down. We started out talking about Facebook, and Steve has been looking into other districts regarding policy and disclaimers. And Steve and Joe decided to go ahead writing a disclaimer as opposed to doing a policy. We figured that the disclaimer will address what we already have as policy, and we'll put links in it. So if anyone has questions, they can go to follow the link and then go on to see the policy that backs up the disclaimers. Steve has been contacting various tech directors in the county regarding how you actually construct the page, and he's going to be using the business model that allows for designated administrators to monitor comments and create their own postings. Our Facebook page will not allow guests to make the initial postings, but they'll be able to comment on it, and we also reserve the right to delete any comments per our disclaimer. Steve Dickens, who is has been instrumental in the Dannon CLS Playground campaign. He's been extremely helpful and generous with his time, and he demonstrated how to use Hootsuite, which integrates both your Twitter and your Facebook and Instagram feed. You can pre-build a marketing campaign that's been very helpful for getting the word out. Our follow-up questions for Facebook is, do we have anything that covers libel? Does the code of conduct cover outsiders commenting on posts? And can we call out particular people for doing good stuff, which we cannot do at board meetings? We then discussed the beginning of the budget newsletter. Unfortunately, the journalism class is not going to be able to help with design, so Steve and Whitney are going to be attending an InDesign training to get working on the board. They've kind of blocked it out, but they just don't have information to put in as of yet. Outreach for long-range planning. Joe is going to reach out to Claudia Cooley from the Rhinebeck Chamber of Commerce to discuss maximizing our relationship with businesses in the village and marketing our school. And Jacqueline is planning to meet with Mary Beth Kale. And Laura did meet with the new family, whose recruiter unfortunately was made redundant. So, but they have some other leads, and we will pursue that. Our next meeting is February 8th. Et voilà.
Any questions for communications? Oh, yeah.
It's a follow-up point about Mr. Dickens, who's a parent at Chancellor, and he did all of this work with Steve, setting up the campaign, the Facebook, Twitter, everything campaign. So I think it would be a really nice idea, because I love thank you notes, to write him a thank you note.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to do that, Deirdre, as the
Absolutely.
board president?
Yes.
As he is an expert in his field and was
He's a
really...
young employee who I believe is like on loan here from their operation in Great Britain, and he's been very, very helpful and interesting, so. Yeah, it's great.
Consider it done.
Thank you.
And thank you if you're watching.
9 o'clock, they've got to get home. Can't drive out from 9.
Yeah, they got homework. Okay, audit committee.
My minutes are always short, so keep it with the shortening theme. We met a couple weeks ago and we reviewed the 5 proposals for the external audit. After a long discussion of looking at the pros and cons of each, we decided to bring 4 back for an interview, scheduled for later this month and maybe into early February.
Just an update on that, we got the 29th.
Okay.
3 of the 4 firms have confirmed. It's just waiting for the last one, just he wasn't available.
And how long are those going to be? Is it half
Yeah,
hour?
I put 45-minute blocks, only to meet with them for 30 minutes, giving us 15 minutes to get the next person in, so I'm trying to get this all completed in a 3-hour block.
Right.
Looking at 12 to 3.
Okay, good. 12 to 3?
Yeah.
I'm going to be late.
Okay.
But you can conference me in.
Okay.
Then we looked at the corrective action plan, which last year's audit raised a couple of issues that they thought we needed to focus on. One is the accounting software being old and not going to be supported after 2020, which we've all talked about. We have a special revenue fund balance deficit of 129,000, which needs to be addressed. We thought we would try to pay that down in 10 years as opposed to 5 to try to give us a little bit more budget money. So we have to see if that goes through. Then there's a change to GASB 75, which used to just try to look at healthcare costs for retirees and put that on your balance sheet as a future expense. They want to now do that for all employees, so not just ones nearing retirement, but ones that are currently, just starting out. So that's going to make that number dramatically higher, and there's also a cost attached to it to do the report. So it may have an impact on some of the smaller audits that we may want to do ourselves if we're spending the money on this type of report every other year. So just something to think about as we move forward.
Questions for audit?
I have a question.
No.
Yeah, please, go ahead with the question.
When are we expecting to replace Infomatic?
We're hoping sometime next fiscal year.
Next, so the 18-19
Yeah,
school
during
year?
18-19.
Okay. All right.
Be like a parallel for a while too. Right?
Yeah.
We want to have
Sure.
a year of overlap. And
Right.
Don't need a whole year, but we need some time to make sure.
training and
Yeah.
Right. And my other question about the new GASB 75 rules, is there any economy of scale if you get an actuary to do a bunch of schools within our BOCES? Can we do that?
Actually, we just emailed around today. BOCES has asked who wanted to be included in that.
Oh, good.
So I put our name into it. So
Great.
hopefully other school districts will too. I'm also going to look at another possibility is there are some BOCES that actually perform this service. And you pay the BOCES, even though it's done by an actuary firm maybe, but it's through BOCES, you pay BOCES, so you get aid back on it. So you might initially pay a few dollars more, but at least you'll generate about 50% of that back. So I am going to look at that possibility too, because there are a couple school districts that actually use, I think it's the Ulster RIC, or the, yeah, I think they do. I'll have to check that, but that's something that someone brought to my attention last week.
Cool.
Personnel?
Those are yours, sorry.
They are the shortest of them all.
I got nothing.
Basically, basically, we're just, that we met to prepare for our upcoming negotiations with the ANI unit, so that's.
Which is scheduled to start on February 5th.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Finance.
Okay, so Finance Committee met last Thursday. Tom has done the calculation on the tax cap, which will be 2.18, if I recall, but it's definitely over 2%.
I think it's 2.5 something. And there's going to be a bit of a modification to that because now I have a building aid figure.
So better than I remember.
Yeah, it is better than that. Last year's was 2.18. We began at 2.18.
That's where I got the number. All right, but there's still a gap of $1.2 million to get down to the tax cap, but there's still a lot of moving parts, you know, health insurance, retirement system, all those numbers that still have to come in. We reviewed a sample list of non-mandated items in the budget. This was a list from 2012-13. So it's, you know, 10, 15 pages of items in the budget that are not mandated. You'll see later in the minutes that Tom is going to develop a new list of non-mandated items for us to review. We discussed items that are likely budget cuts. As you heard earlier, we believe one bus run can be eliminated at about $61,000, and it's possible maybe 2 bus runs, so that'll be a significant savings. But more work needs to be done on the second bus run before we can determine whether that can be cut or not. And we just had some discussion about cuts in athletics. You heard the athletic presentation earlier. So that's pretty much the Finance Committee in a nutshell. We're going to meet later after the meeting to discuss the date for the next meeting, and we'll be having more budget discussions at that meeting.
So I actually have a question for Finance, for any of you, and I guess for Tom as well, which is if you have thoughts about how long-range planning can be syncing with your conversations and deliberations right now in this kind of very crucial time of trying to build the budget, but also looking forward, right, to the plan we're building for next year. So thoughts that may have been.
No, and that's kind of what I said last time. You know, some of these kind of have a lot of overlap, you know, and when we're looking at just from a budget standpoint, it's very simple to say this, 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 and this, but from a strategic standpoint, long-range planning and other committees' curriculum may have different, you know, bullet points and different priorities. So I do think as we get closer and more numbers are firmed up, we're going to need to work a lot closer to give finance direction on as to where to start looking.
Okay.
Well, and the flip side of that is if you guys start identifying things that you think, you know, it's a big number, we could knock back by whatever, $100,000. If you flow that up to long-range planning, we can sort of comb through.
I think flowing things back.
That'll be helpful.
I think some of the things, though, is in intersection with curriculum. And I think that's really the big thing is, are you willing to change your curriculum to save money here, or we don't have to do this, or so on and so forth. So I think those are going to really be a lot of the real questions, because that affects the classroom. And I think the Finance Committee just can't say, yeah, go ahead, do it. Yeah,
right.
Number-wise, it works.
Right, exactly, exactly. But is it the right thing for kids?
Instruction-wise, that's a whole different nature.
Right, but long-range planning and curriculum are really very tightly connected, right?
Yeah.
So.
We may need to have a meeting later on with, you know, with curriculum, with Marvin, to see, you know, have suggestions on whether or not they're even feasible.
Yeah, he suggested that he needed specific questions from us, not just sort of generally, what are you doing? But we're trying to put together a mini workshop for long-range planning to really dig into Forecast 5. So if you've got stuff you want us to query that you don't have time to do in your meeting, we're blocking out like 3 hours to try to work through that stuff, then we can do that and give it back to you.
Also, I mean, I'm getting ahead of myself since I'll be doing long-range planning minutes in a moment, but we also have touched on certain ideas about, obviously not in the short term, but longer term, revenue generating possibilities. And of course, we'd want finance to tell us whether that seems even worth exploring, or if it seems feasible, or if it's too much, too speculative. So those kinds of questions could migrate from that group over to finance too. Yeah.
So according to the minutes, so Tom, you're going to be putting together items that could be cut, and that's kind of different than the way it's been done in the past. I mean, in the past, the principals and Joe, you've kind of put a list together. Is this just like
He's going to be putting together a list of non-mandated items.
Okay, like a separate list from.
Well, it's really everything we could possibly look at to be able to cut that we're not required to do. And to give you an example, I'm not a required position. I mean, so my name's on the list. So I want to show everything, and I just looked, actually found even an older one a year before, where this was the original list. It had $12 million worth of non-mandated items. Right. Now, a lot of those things are gone already. I mean, we took them out of the budget at certain times.
I'm not sure a lot of them are.
No, some of them are gone. Yeah, not a lot of them. But as you go through, I see things, oh, I already know that's gone. And
it's got to be updated.
It's got to be updated. And those budget amounts are 7, 8 years old. So we got to update them with current stuff. So me and Christine are working towards doing a real comprehensive list.
Right.
Could I ask, in terms of, since you already have looked at the issue of buses and cutting back 1 or possibly 2 buses, when you talk about non-mandated, would you actually calculate that based on state law about transportation? As opposed to we go beyond what the state requires us to do for busing, right? So, so would that calculation be on potentially a line?
I guess I could look at trying to do something along that line.
I mean, I don't know if it would make much difference.
Just to let you know is increasing the CLS to 1 mile in the village isn't going to save us anything, because we still have all those buses for the high school, middle school. So it doesn't make sense. So it would have to be in conjunction with increasing mileage requirements at the high school. And if you roll it back to 3 miles for middle school, high school, and 2 miles for elementary. So I could go back and try to figure that out.
Well, you can look at it and see how much you'd save.
Right.
And if it's negligible, then that's.
But that's a vote that the.
We have to go out for a vote.
That's a vote by the community.
Right, but then that's where we begin to talk about difficult decisions we put out to the community, right?
And then there's some safety issues, there's no sidewalks, right?
Exactly.
I mean, it brings up a whole bunch of forms.
Right, of course. I hear you. But I feel like it'd be worthwhile to at least know.
Absolutely.
If that would be a conversation worth having or not,
So is that a lot of work, or is that something in the software you can just change the radius and?
I don't know. I've never tried that with this software.
Let's see what we find out.
I will look into that.
Make it 10 miles and see what.
No cost.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Diane.
It's all right. It's finance related, but not necessarily for finance committee. But as far as process, Joe, when do you think? I mean, a 1.2 million deficit. When do you think a cut list will surface? Like when will we start looking at that? Will that go to finance first? Will it come to us at the next meeting? My concern is a little bit that the community last year felt like they were hearing about this at the last minute. So, I'm just thinking the sooner, we start looking at that, and the community's aware of that, or not that they're here to hear it, but that it's out there, that it's a possibility. I mean, obviously it's a possibility this year.
We probably have to be looking at that by late February. I mean, we're not going to even know who's retiring until early February. So, but that's something that I think we can start working on over the course of the next several weeks.
Just want to make sure that we're communicating that to our public, that that's kind of probably where we're at yet. Obviously, we don't know the numbers, but it's a big number to start with.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else for finance? All right. Long range planning. That's me. We met was it feels like it was today. No.
Yesterday.
It was yesterday. I won't go over the formula for foundation aid. We've already heard about that. We talked in some greater detail in a more granular way. You've got a bit of information in your packet this evening about key terms and concepts that emerged in the survey. Remember, we had 224 participants. I think we sent it out to about 600 different email accounts, and some of the key terms were quality. Quality appeared in a lot of these responses, ranking, reputation, academic standards, overwhelmingly positive responses about teachers, calling out sense of community,
Small class
size, both of classes and of the district as a whole, the curriculum and range of offerings. So again, we're trying to see patterns, where we see patterns emerging, not just here, but in all the communications that we will be undertaking with members of the community to get a sense of values and priorities moving forward. Tom began to walk us through the kinds of data that we can access through Forecast 5, and I gave you a little taste of that in terms of tracing cohorts from coming in kindergarten. And the interesting thing we were able to observe is that the number of students in a kindergarten class does not remain static, right, over time, and live births are not necessarily a super reliable indicator when you're trying to talk about projections with enrollments. One of the indicators that did show some change in volatility is something called mobility indicators. So for instance, in 2017 and 18, 31 new students registered in Rhinebeck. So looking at the class sizes that we have been looking at, that can make some sort of interesting impacts in terms of your planning year to year around staffing, class size, all of those decisions. We looked over the past 5 years, we saw 1 year in which a significant number of students was leaving, and that the average in terms of additional students coming in came out to about 14. Tom surmised that for the foreseeable future we can expect to see similar mobility trends, and so we're looking at some kind of a space between 60 to 80 students that we could imagine as much sort of change in class size for a cohort between 60 and 80. So that's part of what we have to factor into our projections. Laura did some preliminary calculations on how declining enrollments will impact participation in sports, and maybe I can ask her to say something about that when we do questions. We're trying to set up, as we said, a 3-hour workshop where we're all going to sit together and look at Forecast 5 to track enrollment, as we've already started to do, student achievement through test scores. We're looking at this in terms of Dutchess County, looking at where we fall in relationship to other schools that I think most of our residents are going to be curious and making comparisons with. We had identified what we call statistical neighbors also earlier, and we can always look into those comparison groups as well. We're going to look at staffing levels, and we're going to look at special education trends over time. So as you can see, we're going to need to set aside a big block of time to do this. An hour and a half just isn't enough. We would like to invite our colleagues on the other committees to consider joining us in asking and addressing some specific tasks. So for personnel, we know you have your hands full, as you have had for several months, but the org chart, we're still someday interested in all talking about the org chart together. Curriculum, we talked a little bit about CDEP, and when CDEP meets again, really communicating about what's happening in long-range planning, and luckily Laura sits with both groups. Finance, obviously we have to have the 5-year plan for the state. How do we sort of map that onto the things we're trying to do, which are clearly much more strategic in all senses. Audit committee, we hope perhaps we can identify, even looking into the past, recommendations discussed in audit efficiencies and operations, facilities efficiencies as well. This group needs to still meet with Sheldon Teeter to talk about facilities questions. And communications, the idea already that was surfaced of talking to area realtors is one piece. The other is to update a brochure that already exists about the district, and and think strategically about where that could be distributed and how it could be used to inform people considering moving into the district about the strengths of this school system. Joe and Tom will share with us what they've learned in their summit with their colleagues in Red Hook and Pine Plains. We haven't had a chance to really get into that too deeply, and we have begun talking about, in a very specific and targeted way, inviting people to create a citizens advisory group, perhaps to meet twice or 3 times, a very, very limited engagement this spring. How to think about outreach and connection to our community. Frankly, listening to the principals tonight shows us all kinds of ways in which that's happening right now, but how can the building, how can the schools themselves be seen as a welcoming place for members of our community, the very young, for senior citizens? How can we share some of the resources of space with groups that can be our allies in terms of helping the schools to become and remain sustainable? We have many meetings planned for February.
Some of which have changed already.
Yeah, please don't. Yeah, right. They're changing all the time. Laura, tell us a little bit about what you prepared.
I forgot about this when we were over in the district office. So these are gross numbers only. They're not granular, and Tom really wanted to dive into them based on male-female participation for all sports and stuff. But just generally looking at the trends from 2013, projecting out to 2021. In the fall, our highest participation number was 253 kids. And on average, from 2013 to 2018, we have about a 42% participation rate in the fall. And if you take sort of our enrollment numbers projected out to 2021, 22, by 2020, we'll only have 218 kids if the averages bear out. So that's more than a whole team. And in the winter, we have about 89 at the highest. We'd go down to about 78. Not quite a full team, but I don't know how much you need for basketball. And then at the highest in the spring, 221 participating, going down to 198 in 1920, 2021. So there definitely seems to be some contraction in the numbers of kids that we're just going to physically have here to participate in sports. So understanding what that means, especially as we talk about, maybe having a girls' golf team, and these things may or may not really be, as much as we want to provide opportunity for kids, it might not be the right thing to do given finances and,
Well, expanding opportunities may seem just not practical.
Right.
I think it's more a case of what opportunities can we hang on to versus what can we expand. I think expanding while enrollment is where it is probably pretty much out of the question.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, those reductions aren't across any single team.
Exactly. They are gross numbers. I do want to stress that. It's,
And it'd be interesting to break it by gender, like.
Yeah.
And, to see if that
because
leads
that's
to any staggering.
Yeah.
It's just a, snowy afternoon project.
Next week, please do it for clubs.
Okay, I'll do it for clubs next. Get me the participation numbers.
Okay, any other questions for long range?
All right, for fun
Yes.
time.
Just a question on, 2 questions. One on the Pine Plains analysis. Do they have the same issues as we have as reducing enrollment and special ed? And how comparable are the 2 districts? And are they, and can you get that off Forecast 5, or is that something?
You can see a lot on Forecast 5.
So does it make sense to kind of have a conversation with them on how they're tackling this issue? Maybe there's different.
Well, we know they just merged their high school. They
Right,
merged their
so
high school.
Yeah, so now it's a junior high school.
But, and
rather.
how is,
They
but what's been kind of the outcome of that?
You want to talk to them about that?
Yeah.
This is their first year, I
Yeah.
think, the juniors.
Yeah.
And then the second one, just on that donor thing that we had talked about a week or so ago, who's leading
Who
that?
takes ownership of the donor?
Of looking at a donor charitable arm type thing for donations, if and the revenue.
On that, did we?
Probably not.
No, we
did.
Well, I mean, let's just keep it with LRP until we figure out like a
But it fits into
direction.
the revenue side, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. Okay.
it might, should be listed there as a
Okay,
catch-all.
that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Comments? Good news.
Right.
Good news. We need some good news, people. Good
Had a
news.
lot tonight.
We have
We had a lot of good news
news.
tonight.
What else can we add on that?
It's hard to add.
It's always
to
tough
that.
when they
It
make
is. They always,
There's-
you know, take the wind out of
I'm
our
just saying
sails.
that so many people are voting for the chancellor.
That's
new
incredible.
equipment, and then they should keep doing it. You can't plug that enough.
Yes.
I don't know what's called the
I think that the team that is handling the communications on that could just become our
Yeah, it's everywhere.
PR team for
Except they're also the PE teachers.
just their spare time. Nothing could stop them.
It's so time consuming though. I
Yeah.
don't know how many times I can click signs, vehicles, trucks. And
Don't do it on your phone. That's
I
the only
don't,
time
but
get
I
that.
do 10 emails a day, right?
I'm just sick of putting my
And every day
Do you
gets,
do it
right.
in Chrome? Try Chrome.
I do Chrome, yeah.
I'm doing my QR.
I
doing it on my
only.
phone.
Do you have any emails that you do at a time?
Do the QR
12.
reader.
Really? And you don't get,
Maybe I'll get 3 of them where I have to.
mine is almost every single time. And then I don't always get all the trucks, and then it's like,
Then you have to get a whole new
Yes,
picture.
I'm
You
not
got a whole new
keeping.
picture.
Yeah,
That's funny.
I'm tired, come on, it's late.
Well, it is really heartening to see.
Yeah, that's great. The numbers
Yeah.
are just
it's
incredible.
Everyone and every business, and it's everywhere.
Now, we
Yeah.
can't see though how our numbers are doing.
No.
right? We just
No.
see the total.
Yeah,
Yeah.
total votes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering if they didn't get enough site hits to their website that they extended it, right? I mean, Dana must be doing something for hits to their site or something
Yeah.
that they're hoping to drive this advertising up, right?
I don't know. I haven't
But I
gotten
think they didn't get what they
emails
wanted, so they
That's why
extended.
they're extending it.
I don't know, why else would they do it, right? I don't know. I'm getting, tired. It's
Generosity.
It's not like they're giving money per
Look at all the emails.
click.
Look at the emails they've generated.
No, that's true.
Well, let's hope we're going to have some good news on this
Yeah,
yeah.
fingers
eventually.
crossed.
Right?
Fingers
Yeah, it's
crossed.
great. Old business.
I have an old business. In rereading the minutes from last meeting, we had asked when we were going through the budget if we could understand better why the PE department in high school was looking for a laptop cart, and also if with a new curriculum being developed, we needed new social studies textbooks, or if that was not for textbooks.
Tom and I met with Dr. Davenport. I think that was just yesterday, if I'm not mistaken.
It was that or the day before. No, it had to be
Before we
yesterday. It
went
had to be
over the
yesterday.
weekend.
It had to be yesterday.
And those were some of the questions we
Here,
told
but
him.
they weren't.
We wanted him to go through that list of his increases, and that Tom would generate, he'd generate the list of items, and then we wanted to talk with him, like, beginning of next week, to have those conversations. We talked specifically about technology and about the potential duplication of monies in the budget on technology, but also the need for that specifically, that maybe it couldn't be met from technology we already own.
Right.
Why do we have to buy a new laptop cart for that
Right.
specific purpose? So we've put a number of those things on his radar and said, the 3 of us need to meet again in a few days, and you need to come back to us with explanations. So I feel pretty confident we'll have most, if not all, those answers before the next board meeting, because that's going to play into the second draft of the budget as well.
Yeah.
I'm not going to leave X in the budget for X technology that he has in the high school budget and that Steve Jensen has in his budget. I mean, there's no reason for it.
Right.
So that's easy pickings, right? That's low hanging fruit. So we already had an initial meeting with him to say, we need to parse this stuff out.
Right.
So I think we'll have that by the next meeting.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Seeing no public, why don't we move on to other? Any other?
Yeah, so do you want me to set up meetings with our legislators?
Yes,
Yes,
please.
Okay. I just wanted to hear the.
Was that unanimous?
Mad as hell. We want to go talk to our legislators.
Talked about the legislative breakfast. February 21st is the Chamber State of Rhinebeck dinner. It's a Wednesday night. There's a thing in your blue folders at your place. with the information about that. If you want to attend, let me know.
I would just like to say congratulations. First time ever Board of Ed President's been invited to speak at the Good Egg Award.
Lucky you.
I mean, I don't know what strings you pulled, but, and sadly I'm not going to be able to be there. I'm going to be in the city that night.
Please
Really
share,
wish I could.
share your thoughts with me about what you'd like me to say.
I mean, to be honest with you, I don't think we pulled any strings.
No.
We had asked, as we had for every year, as long as I can remember, when they shunned us from speaking at that meeting, well, I mean, they kind of have. We asked before, and it was, no, there's too much on the agenda. Yeah, there's too many,
I thought there was an incident or something.
Joel Tigers and Lauren Molineros
This year.
and all these other people,
yeah.
the politicos who were there.
Joel and
give up the
Marcus
stage.
have too much time pissing each other.
And we asked only to be allowed to speak at one of the spring, just the regular meeting, their regular monthly meeting, which they gladly accommodated us for many years. And then this past spring, I inquired again about being on the April agenda or whatever, and Claudia said something about, well, no, I think we're going to try to have you be part of the thing in the winter. Well, okay, I've heard that before, and it's never happened, but this time it happened, so
It's great.
I'll give all the credit to her for however she's setting up the agenda for that meeting, that the people who have traditionally spoken, other than the town representative and the village representative who should be speaking, you know, the other kind of ancillary people, apparently they're not on the agenda to speak, and instead your elected official is on the agenda to speak. So,
Well, it's great, we're honored.
yeah, it's a recognition that it's been a long time coming. So
We're
anyway,
trying not to get us shunned.
well, you have to do something to get shunned this year.
Okay, all right.
Don't talk too long.
All right.
Keep it short.
I'll keep it short, I'll keep it short. I won't have anything written.
Short and sweet.
No, you might. It's a tough crowd, Deirdre.
All right, okay.
Bring Hershey's Kisses or something.
Yeah, right, distribute candy. Okay,
When do you need to
any
know
other?
Good question. I have to look myself.
think
I just got that thing
I don't
today. I'm not sure
think I
if there's
see a date
deadline.
in here, but.
So February
Missing it.
21st was the date. But
That's the
Yeah, but
date.
the
That's
No,
the
that's the
tulip
event.
registration.
There doesn't seem to be a date here. I don't know if it's a sellout kind of.
We'll look.
It gets pretty full.
Okay, do we have any other?
Doesn't look like
We've
it.
come to the end of
Hang
our.
on, hang on.
Because, you know,
Do you have some more?
No.
Okay. There was something in your packet about the Lower Hudson Education Coalition.
yes.
And I know you mentioned it, I think, and I think I've also given my opinion on that. Speaking of shunning, well, I still have my nose out of joint for their pretty much ignoring us these many years ago when we were trying to fight the Bard Charter School, and they pretty much weren't really too interested in what was happening that far north of the Westchester border. So I wasn't inclined to be that interested in their efforts, but they have changed their tune somewhat, and I just think it might be worth being attentive to their agenda. There's a subscription fee to be a member of that group. I know Kelly Lappin, who was the executive director of our Duchess group, has become more involved there. So I guess I'm just mentioning it to suggest that we keep an open mind.
Okay.
That's all. At this point, I wouldn't say more or less than that.
And do you know what the fee is?
Off the top of my head, I don't. I've already gotten the bill and just summarily whipped it up and threw it away. But I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will rebill us if we ask them.
I'm sure they will.
Or maybe we'll see what happens this year and consider joining next year.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Because they're in they're in a reorg mode.
Yeah.
I think I had mentioned they had this woman who was their lobbyist for like 100 years, and I'm not sure if this is terrible. I won't say it.
Don't say it.
No, I won't
Don't
say it. 'Cause I know
say
we're being filmed. She retired. Okay, it's better than she passed away. So she's not doing it anymore. So they're trying to figure out how they're going to like reinvent themselves. So they're in a reinvent mode. I'm okay with laying back, watching. Maybe next year, if it seems like they have pulled it together, it might be worth our involvement. I'm not just rejecting it out of hand because I had a bad experience with them 18 years ago. I mean, things change, and their lobbyist has changed, and they're reorganizing. So I think we just keep an eye on it in the short term. Yeah, that's my advice. But.
Great. Let's move on to action items. Is there anyone who wishes to remove any item from the consent agenda? Okay, that being the case, may I have a nomination to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? That's unanimous. Passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to accept the 2018 Shape America, JRFH, HFH, grant award as submitted by Mr. Kevin Yarnell.
By whom?
Mr. Kevin Yarnell. Including a $1,300 professional development stipend, a $1,200 U.S. Games gift certificate, redeemable for physical education equipment, and various other non-monetary opportunities as stipulated.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? I just want to thank Mr. Yarnell for his amazing energy and enterprise.
Kudos to the Energizer.
Yet again.
Oh my God. It's really
all those
cool.
in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to accept grant award from the Rhinebeck Science Foundation in support of funding for the Rhinebeck Innovation Academy program as submitted by Mr. Stephen Jensen in the amount of $4,860 as stipulated.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I have a question. Are the academy sounds great. Have the teachers identified themselves as participating, or is this sort of a hopeful target for?
It's a pilot.
Right.
And they went down, Stephen Marvin went down to Scarsdale, I think, a few years ago. They have a similar program, although it's been going for many more years. And this is kind of patterned after their program, which is basically having teachers teach teachers. So they put this together as, my understanding is they put this together as a pilot, like, let's see if we can get funded, let's try it, let's see how it works. If it works, then maybe there are opportunities to go back to the Science Foundation and say, well, you know, we'd like to, that one worked so well that we'd like to try to run 3 of them next year, and see if they can build it. So it hasn't gotten off the ground yet. I mean, they just got.
Oh, so they haven't identified people who are interested in a
no,
program like this?
No.
Okay.
No. They think that there is a group of teachers who have expressed an interest in learning more about Canvas, that they feel that there's a critical mass of teachers who would be willing to do like an after-school thing and pay teachers, you know, the Henry Frisch Connects of the world who are using Canvas and are very adept at it, have them teach their colleagues how to use this, and then see where it goes from there.
Okay.
I just want to add that RSF has come forward at so many crucial moments over the years to support professional development in service of advancing curriculum in this district, and it's another great example of this. All those in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to accept the resignation of Barbara Rizzolo, Chancellor Livingston Elementary School teacher, for the purpose of retirement as stated, effective the close of business on June 30th, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? One of our great teachers. All those in favor? It's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the list of additional emergency conditional substitute non-instructional staff for the 2017-18 school year.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? It's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the appointment of Catherine Mostello to the full-time position of typist 1, 10 months, assigned to the RHS BMS attendance office effective January 10th, 2018. A reassignment from the combined position of typist 1, school monitor 10 month at a salary of step 11, $37,745 in accordance with the Annie salary schedule for 2017-18 with a 26-week probationary period.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the selection of A Little Argument, Fagley and Seltzer, Pearson, 2010, for English 12?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve an extension of the leave request under the Family and Medical Leave Act granted to Morgan Labruto commencing on January 25th, 2018, with such leave to be taken as paid medical leave through the period of disability as certified by a physician in writing through March 11th, 2018 or thereabouts, to the extent of her accrued sick leave and thereafter to grant additional unpaid child care leave through the conclusion of the 2017-18 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the appointment of additional enrichment program advisors for Chancellor Livingston Elementary School for the 2017-18 school year? See attached.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve an extension of the appointment of Mara Hermele as a long-term substitute in the position of school social worker at the Chancellor Livingston Elementary School, initially to be effective on or about January 26, 2018 through March 11, 2018, now extended through the conclusion of the 2017-18 school year at the pleasure of the board, at the rate of Step 1, MA plus 30 plus 6, $62,156 prorated in accordance with the RTA salary schedule for 2016-17. This appointment is to fill the vacancy created by the extension of the leave of absence granted to Morgan Labruto, school social worker at the Chancellor Livingston Elementary School.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the following resolution? Be it resolved that the Rhinebeck Central School District Board of Education approve the corrective action plan that addresses the 2016-17 annual external audit performed by EFPR for the school year ended June 30th, 2017. The corrective action plan is attached.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Quick, Tom, you're going to change that to 10 years on the...
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, as amended? All those in favor?
Yeah, I did. It's changed. It's changed. Yeah, it is amended.
So not as...
It already is.
Okay.
It's already there. Yeah, I
Okay.
changed it from.
Okay. All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve an extension of the appointment of Amanda Smeeds as long-term substitute in the position of academic support teacher at the Rhinebeck High School, having commenced on October 23rd, 2017 through December 3rd, 2017, and now extended through February 12th, 2018 at the rate of Step 2, MA plus 1, $60,526 prorated and retroactive to November 28, 2017, in accordance with the RTA salary schedule for 2016-17. This appointment is to fill the vacancy created by the medical leave of absence granted to Karen Signor, academic support teacher at the Rhinebeck High School.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the appointment of Danielle Leonardi to the part-time position of personnel assistant effective January 11th, 2018 at a salary of $20 per hour for 17.5 hours per week?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the appointment of Kelly Levine as long-term substitute in the position of elementary teacher at the Chancellor Livingston Elementary School, effective on or about March 5th, 2018 through June 21st, 2018, at the pleasure of the board, at the rate of Step 1 MA, $58,482 prorated, in accordance with the RTA salary schedule for 2016-17. This appointment is to fill the vacancy created by the leave of absence granted to Kristen Secor, elementary teacher at the Chancellor Livingston Elementary School.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion to move into executive session for the purpose of discussing collective negotiations with, no. We're not. Yeah.
No. To discuss, I think the exact wording, but it's a potential special education settlement.
To discuss a potential special education settlement.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Okay, we are moving into executive session, Matt. Motion is unanimous.
Okay, which means I'm moving over to get a cookie.